Donald Trump has turned his fire on one of his most loyal MAGA foot soldiers, Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. Watch this.
I passed a great, big, beautiful bill, which is the biggest tax cuts in the history of our country. So when somebody like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's now catering to the other side, I don't know what, I guess she's, got some kind of vernacular, but I'm surprised at her. But when somebody like Marjorie goes over and starts making statements like that, it shows she doesn't know.
Okay, Marjorie Taylor Greene stood by him through the impeachments, through January 6th, through the rallies, through the whole movement. She is MAGA. And now he's calling her a sellout, catering to the other side. Why? Because she dared to say what millions of Americans are thinking right now, that the so-called America First agenda doesn't look so America First anymore.
Is there anything, though, you'd critique or do differently?
My critique is not being focused on America First, but I largely blame that on our Congress because I serve in the House. I also blame that on who's advising him in the White House. Keeping him on nonstop tours around the world and nonstop meetings with foreign countries' leaders is not America First. It's just not. I think domestic policy should be the most important issue that the president and the Republican-controlled House and Senate are working on, and that showed up in the election on Tuesday.
But as the president, does he get some responsibility for that?
Well, of course. I mean, every president is responsible for the way that they lead, but they're also in a silo of information. And I think that's why after the election on Tuesday, you saw President Trump come out and react differently, probably because they couldn't keep him siloed. And here's the polls, sir, and this is what people are saying. I think he saw for himself, and he's reacted.
It's very interesting.
Okay, she's right. I mean, she's calling out the shift, the mission creep. Trump's White House calendar looks like a foreign policy tour, not a presidency focused on working Americans. We're building new bases in Israel now. They're floating that idea. Also plans to, buy Greenland were on the table for a while, threatening Canada with a takeover, making them the 51st state. And now reportedly blowing up boats in Venezuela, all while Americans are working 2 jobs to afford groceries. This isn't America First, it's Empire First, and Marjorie keeps calling that out.
The president says there's virtually no inflation and that grocery prices are going down. Do you agree with him on that?
No, I go to the grocery store myself. Grocery prices remain high. Energy prices are high. My electricity bills are higher here in Washington, D.C. at my apartment, and they're also higher at my house in Rome, Georgia, higher than they were a year ago. So affordability is a problem, and I'm a mom. My kids are 22, 26, and 28. That's the generation I worry about the most, and they're having a very hard time. But when I go back home and I talk to many of my constituents, I'm hearing stories of not only are we having a really hard time affording groceries and rent and things like that, but I'm also hearing stories about people maxing out their credit cards just to afford their monthly expenses.
So when the president says that it's not that affordability hasn't been fixed, it's that people and Republicans aren't talking about it enough. That seemed to be a takeaway of his from Tuesday night's elections. Mm-hmm. You disagree with that sentiment? I think
Tuesday was definitely a referendum on how leaders in this country are leading. And I believe in America First policies. That's why I campaigned for President Trump and have supported him as long as I have, and I do support him. But I want all of my colleagues to come through in action in supporting America First policies, and I think the American people showed that on Tuesday. You're not going to convince them to go to the polls and vote by bailing out Argentina, and you're not going to convince them to go to the polls and vote by continuing to fund foreign wars and foreign countries and foreign causes. You're going to get them to go to the polls and vote when you show up to work and actually fix the problems that they face every single day.
Exactly. You don't need a PhD in economics to see it, right? Food prices are up 4%. Utilities are higher. Rents are through the roof. Meanwhile, Trump's saying there's no inflation. And then he goes and tells Americans to take out 50-year mortgages and 15-year car loans. Let that sink in. The builder president is now basically saying, you can't afford the American dream, so let's just stretch it out for half a century. That's not bold economic policy. That's desperation. And Marjorie's the only one with the guts to actually say it. She's been criticizing both sides. They say, oh, look, she's turned on Republicans. She has been criticizing both sides from the very beginning.
Here's something you all may not know about me. I think a lot of people on the left are learning that when I ran for Congress in 2020, I ran criticizing Republicans and Democrats equally, because I come from a working class family, ran a construction company for over 20 years, and I feel like the government has failed all of us. And it purely disgusts me. It really does. And I represent a district that is rural, manufacturing district, blue-collar workers, and people have been crushed by decades of failure in Washington, D.C. And so I have no problem pointing fingers at everyone. And the worst thing that I just can't get over is we're not working right now. And I put that criticism directly on the Speaker of the House. And we should be at work. All the people sitting in this audience, they go to work every day. People at home watching this show, they go to work every day. Ladies, you go to work every day. The people on your set, and it is an embarrassment to me that we're not in session.
And getting paid.
I'm not taking a paycheck.
Good for you.
Exactly.
I'm not taking a paycheck.
Exactly. Good for you. I think you're one of the only ones. Well,
Do you know what that sounded like? That sounded like 2016 Trump, the outsider, the guy who said the system's rigged, the politicians have sold us out, the American worker's been forgotten. That's what built the MAGA movement in the first place. And now Trump is attacking that message, calling it catering to the other side. That's not the movement changing Washington. That's Washington changing the movement. And the result? The dollar's weaker than it's been in years. Prices are up, savings are down, and now people are being told they need 50-year mortgages and 15-year car loans just to survive. You know, this is what happens when our political class spends years fighting each other instead of fixing the economy. So where do you even put your money anymore? The markets are chaotic, Washington's chaotic, and nobody trusts what's coming next. Well, one company that's actually trying to hedge against all of this instability is called Upexi, ticker symbol UPXI. And they've taken a really unique approach that lets everyday investors benefit from the crypto world without having to deal with crypto wallets, seed phrases, or any of that complicated stuff. So here's how it works. Upexi, the sponsor for this segment, is a publicly traded U.S. company. You can literally look it up on the NASDAQ under UPXI. They used to be a traditional consumer brand company, but this year they made a major pivot. They've repositioned themselves as a digital asset treasury company focused on Solana, which is one of the fastest growing blockchain networks out there. Now, that sounds fancy, but here's the plain English version. Instead of you having to buy crypto directly, Upexi does it for you. They buy, hold, and manage Solana, also called SOL, as part of their business model. So if you own shares of Upexi, you're indirectly getting exposure to Solana's performance, the same way owning shares of MicroStrategy gives you exposure to Bitcoin. And let's be honest, that's appealing to a lot of people who don't want to mess around with crypto wallets, passwords, or the risk of getting scammed or rug pulled, as the crypto crowd calls it. Upexi is a regulated, publicly traded company with a real leadership team, audited financials, and a clear strategy. Now, if you've only ever heard of Bitcoin, or maybe you've heard of Ethereum, here's why Solana is actually worth paying attention to. Solana is known for being fast, cheap, and energy efficient. Where Bitcoin can take 10 minutes for a transaction to go through, Solana can do it in seconds and for fractions of a penny. That speed and low cost have made Solana the network of choice for developers building everything from finance apps to NFT marketplaces to AI-driven tools. Think of Bitcoin as digital gold. You know, it just sits there and stores value. Ethereum is like the app store. It lets you build things, but it's gotten expensive. And Solana is the high-speed, low-cost alternative, the one actually being used for real-world applications at scale. That's why a lot of people in the crypto world are saying Solana might end up being the backbone for the next generation of digital finance. As of right now, and this is all public, Upexi holds over 2 million Solana coins worth about $397 million. They're not just sitting on it either, they're staking their Solana. And if you're not familiar with that term, staking basically means they're putting those coins to work on the network to help secure it, and in return they earn yield, kind of like earning interest on a savings account. Upexi's earning roughly 7 to 8% annually, which works out to be about $75,000 per day in daily revenue. On top of that, they're also buying locked Solana tokens at discounted prices, a way to lock in built-in profit once those tokens become tradable. So they're not just betting on crypto prices, they're actively managing their assets like professionals. Here's why this matters. Upexi's trying to become the MicroStrategy of Solana. Now, MicroStrategy gave everyday investors a way to get Bitcoin exposure through a simple stock purchase. Upexi's doing that for Solana, a network that's fast, scalable, and already powering thousands of projects. The company's led by CEO Alan Marshall, with Brian Ruddick as Chief Strategy Officer, and they've recently added John Najarian, yes, the longtime financial analyst and trader you've seen on TV, along with a major Solana influencer known as Soul Big Brain, to their advisory board. So they've got both the Wall Street experience and the crypto expertise. Since launching this new treasury model, Upexi's adjusted Solana per share is up 82%, and early investors from the spring have seen returns close to 96%. Of course, markets go up and down, nothing's guaranteed, but that's some serious traction. With the economy unstable and the dollar losing strength, people are looking for new ways to protect themselves, ways that don't involve jumping into risky, unregulated crypto exchanges. Upexi is one of the few companies giving Americans an on-ramp to this new digital economy through the traditional stock market. So if you want to learn more, just look up Upexi, that's UPEXI, ticker symbol UPXI, on Yahoo Finance or NASDAQ.com, and check out their investor page at ir.upexi.com. Again, this is not financial advice. Always do your own research, but Upexi might be one of the most interesting plays out there right now for people who want exposure to the growth of Solana and the broader digital asset space without all the crypto headaches. We'll have a link in the description below so you can dig deeper into their press releases, learn how the staking works, and see the numbers for yourself. It's definitely one to keep an eye on as the financial system keeps shifting and Americans keep looking for real, tangible ways to hedge against inflation and chaos in Washington. Thank you for watching this clip from the full Kim Iversen Show, which you can catch Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern at KimIversenShow.com. It is free for you to watch. Again, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern, KimIversenShow.com. See you there.